My name is Vanessa Clark. I'm 52 years old, and right now I'm sitting at my dining room table wearing a navy blue dress, the same one I wore to my mother's funeral, and absolutely nothing in this room feels real. I have a split lip, a bruise the shape of a hand blooming across my left cheek like someone planted rage beneath my skin and watered it overnight. Terrence did that, my husband. He hit me last night. The back of his hand caught my face like I was a fly he was swatting off the wall. And I didn't scream. Didn't fight back. I just stood there in my silk robe, tasting my own blood, hearing the kettle whistle behind me like my body was warning me. This is it, this is your line. But I didn't speak. Not yet. Because I knew that morning would come. And when it did, so would the reckoning. This morning wasn't ordinary. No slamming cabinets, no footsteps pacing above me, no tension so thick it's hard to breathe. No, the air was still. Peaceful. Deceiving, like the eye of a hurricane that you know ain't done with you yet. I'd set the dining room table like something out of a wedding magazine. Our wedding china, the gold-trimmed white plates that had spent 18 years untouched behind glass. Funny, I guess violence makes you remember what elegance felt like. The white tablecloth underneath, handmade by my grandmother, delicate, intricate, she threaded bits of herself into every embroidery stitch. I laid out gardenias from my backyard. The same flowers I carried in my bouquet 18 years ago. And I cooked. Lord, I cooked like someone preparing for peace talks with God himself. Cheese grits with sharp cheddar melted the way my grandma used to teach over summer campfires. Scrambled eggs bathed in cream, fluffy and golden and proud, like something out of a southern brunch photo. Thick-cut applewood bacon, crispy just at the edges. Biscuits the kind you could build a house on, flaky, buttery, brushed with melted gold. Sliced strawberries, cantaloupe, coffee brewing in the stainless steel machine Terrence once said was a waste of money. It wasn't a breakfast. It was a statement. A final meal. For him, but especially for me. Because unlike all the mornings before this, I wasn't shaking. I wasn't bracing for a voice raised loud enough to shatter windows. I wasn't shrinking, I was still. Solid. Steady. Finally. I sat at the head of my table with my hands folded in my lap, my pearls on, my spine straight, my body broken, sure, but my soul. Steel. At 8:05, I heard his footsteps on the stairs. That same rhythm, heavy, casual. That's what hit me right then, the normalcy of it. The man who had bruised me the night before would come downstairs for breakfast like he hadn't done a thing. Like if I stayed quiet long enough, maybe he could convince me I bruised myself. He walked into the dining room, still damp from his shower, weekend clothes on a polo shirt tucked into worn khakis, hair still damp. When his eyes landed on the table, I saw it hit him. The food, the china, and then me. His face stopped smiling. The confusion in his eyes reached for a moment of hope, but it never caught it. Not after he saw what he'd done to my face. He smiled still, not an apologetic one. Not remorse, not even regret. It was satisfaction. Like he thought this whole performance, this breakfast, was proof that he'd finally broken me right. He pulled out a chair like a damn king surveying conquered land. Took a biscuit. Bit into it. And while flakes of it landed on my grandmother's heirloom cloth like ash, he said it. Guess you finally learned, huh? A little discipline goes a long way. This is how it should have been all along, baby. You just needed to understand who's in charge. And I didn't say a word. Because the scene wasn't finished yet. Because the audience hadn't arrived. Because this was a theater production and the curtain hadn't lifted. Because in 7 more minutes, everything would change. At exactly 8:12 a.m., the doorbell rang. Like a judge banging their gavel in a slow, devastating rhythm. I stood up, smoothed my dress, let myself feel nothing. And he blinked, his jaw twitching slightly. Who the hell is that? Didn't I say don't have people over on the weekends? Vanessa, who did you invite? I turned to him, lifted my chin, met his eyes, not with fear, not this time. I invited them, I said. My voice, finally mine again, wasn't a cry. It was a sentence. A sentence he would carry with him in handcuffs. And you're going to sit right there and wait. I walked through the hallway slowly. Each step toward the front door felt like peeling back layers of fear. Layers I'd worn like armor, like chains. I could feel him stewing behind me. I could hear the tension building already in his bones. But Terrence didn't even know that the ghosts he'd summoned were flesh and blood. When I opened the door, there they stood. Detective Lisa Hartwell. Badge polished, uniform starched, her eyes steely but soft when they saw my face. Pastor Jerome. In his black clergy shirt and white collar, no Bible today, just sorrow. And justice. And my sister Denise. Tears already catching in the corners of her eyes. Her hand clutching her purse like it held her strength. They looked at me. At my split lip. At the bruise like spilled ink. None of them spoke at first. And they didn't nod too. Because silence doesn't always mean weakness. Sometimes it means the reckoning has just walked through the door. I didn't always flinch when a man raised his voice. And once upon a time, Terrence's voice was my safe place. Silky, kind, and thoughtful. There was a time when I would have moved mountains to get back to that man. But people don't become monsters overnight. They drip into it drop by drop until all that sweetness turns to poison. And you wake up with a bruise on your face wondering when love became a battlefield. I met Terrence at a book club inside Bethlehem Church here in Charleston. It was a discussion on Beloved by Toni Morrison, and I still remember the way he talked about pain and legacy like it wasn't abstract, like he felt it deep. Back then he was passionate and warm, well-read, quick-witted, confident in the classroom but gentle at home. A high school history teacher the students adored. The kind of man who quoted Frederick Douglass one minute and cooked shrimp and grits the next. His mother had passed when he was in college. I think in some ways he carried that grief like a blueprint for how to protect women, fiercely, quietly. I was 34 when we got married. Terrence was 36. We exchanged vows under ancient oak trees, Spanish moss waving like ancestral veils. I wore a cream-colored dress, he wore gray. And his smile that day, it could have lit every street lamp in Charleston. We danced under string lights. I ate cake, held hands, picked gardenias, and swore we'd be each other's everything forever. There were no kids. Not by choice, not entirely by accident either. Life just filled itself with work, shared hobbies, renovations. We bought our little row house in the historic district, a fixer-upper that we turned into a dream. Terrence refinished every wood floor himself like it was a sacred rite of passage. I painted every room. We argued about curtains. We made up over cheesecake. I thought we were building a life worth keeping. There was a time when he made me feel not just seen, but understood. On Mondays, he'd leave handwritten notes in my lunchbox. Have a beautiful day, my queen. To my brilliant librarian, never forget what's inside you. Once he waited outside the school library just to walk me home in the rain. No umbrella. That version of him wasn't fake. It was real. That's what people don't understand about women like me. I didn't marry a villain. I married a good man. But good men can fall. And sometimes they take you down with them. The beginning of the end came crashing in with a girl, a 17-year-old student. She accused my husband of touching her. Said it happened during one of his after-school tutoring sessions. I remember standing in the kitchen, coffee in hand, barefoot on tile, listening to the words come through the phone like a bomb. Inappropriate contact. Suspension pending investigation. Terrence's entire demeanor that night, he was shattered. Not enraged, not defensive. He looked at me and wept. He said, "I didn't do it, Ness, please believe me." I believed him. Every cell in my body did. He had poured his soul into that classroom for over a decade. And yet, the accusation spread like wildfire through Charleston County. It didn't matter that the police found her texts. Proof she'd planned the lie out of revenge for failing a grade. It didn't matter that her friends confirmed she promised to make him pay. Because once a stain hits your name in a town like this, it sticks. The damage was done. Terrence was cleared. But he didn't come back the same. The community, the parents, the colleagues, they all looked at him like maybe. Maybe he did it. Maybe where there's smoke, there's fire. They asked him to quietly step down for the district's image. Moved him across town. From a classroom where he once inspired, to one that treated him like a ghost. He said it felt like being buried alive in front of everyone. He said we had to tighten up. Be more careful. Then came the bourbon. Just a glass to sleep, then two. Then he'd come home with the weight of suspicion still strapped to his shoulders. At first he was just quiet, withdrawn. Then quiet turned to cold. And cold turned to knives made of words. You could have spoken up more. Your silence probably made everyone think I was guilty. You should have defended me harder. I tried, God knows I did. But the man I loved had begun rewriting the story. In his head, he was the victim. The world was the enemy. And I, somehow, had become a part of that world. That summer, Terrence took over our household like a hostile CEO. He said I was spending too much. That I didn't respect the strain we were under. He took away my debit card. Gave me cash allowances. $40 a week for groceries, for anything. I'm the one bringing in real money. And I, God help me, I didn't push back. Instead, I wondered maybe it was stress. Maybe if I held on tight, he'd circle back to who he was before. Let me tell you, hope is the biggest hell a woman can live in when she's being hurt. He started peeking over my shoulder, asking who I was texting, calling me while I was at the bookstore to make sure I was at the bookstore. He implied I might be disloyal, ungrateful, complicit in the world that turned against him. Book club canceled. Lunch with Denise, guilt-tripped into staying home. Dinner out with friends, why waste that money? I said no less and less. Not because I agreed, but because no felt risky. That photo frame in my kitchen, the one that cycles through pictures of us, it played all night before the morning I finally broke free. Wedding day, smiles dusted gold by sunlight. Terrence receiving an award as Teacher of the Year. A charity gala where we danced, my hand on his chest, his on the small of my back. Those were real. But the images lied by omission. They didn't show the nights he refused to look me in the eyes. They didn't capture the sound of his voice when it stung instead of soothed. They didn't blink a shutter when my heart first cracked quietly in the dark. Love doesn't rot in a day. It decays slowly, methodically, gently enough that you're too numb to notice it's turned toxic until your body becomes a silent battlefield. And even after the bruises start, part of you will still want to believe the man who once called you queen is just lost, not cruel. But the truth, some men do not lose themselves. They trade themselves in. And pray you take long enough to not notice it. You don't become someone else's prisoner all at once. It starts small. Apologies in advance become orders behind closed doors. The words you used to speak aloud, you learn to rehearse silently instead. Hope fades not with a crash, but a whisper. And one day you realize the silence doesn't mean peace. It means permission. We used to fight fairly back when Terrence was still mostly himself. About chores, about dinner plans, about paint colors and that chipped fence post he'd never fix. But after the accusation, after the reassignment, after the bourbon started stacking up on the counter, our arguments weren't arguments anymore. They were warnings. Any opinion I shared became rebellion. Any boundary became betrayal. I remember the moment that changed everything for me. It was a Tuesday. Late spring, Charleston air thick with jasmine. I'd made his favorite meatloaf with mashed potatoes, gravy made from scratch. He came home late, already drinking, tie half off, jacket tossed on the floor. I asked if he was okay, he didn't answer, just sat down like the furniture owed him respect. I placed his food in front of him. He poked at the meatloaf, took one indifferent bite, finished chewing. Then that quiet explosion. Dry, as usual, can't even cook anymore. What the hell happened to you? He didn't shout it, that would have been easier. No, he said it slow, cold, dismissive. Like nothing I did could ever be right again. I started to get up, to offer to make something else. And that's when the plate flew between us, sailing past my shoulder, shattering against the kitchen wall. Meatloaf on the wallpaper. Gravy dripping like blood down the molding. And then the silence. He wasn't looking at the mess, he was looking at me. Clean it up. And he walked upstairs. Didn't slam the door, didn't glance back. Just tossed destruction over his shoulder and left me to sweep it up. I stood there for too long, milk curdling in the fridge, grits on the stove cooling to stone. Then I got paper towels. And like some twisted Cinderella story, I cleaned the food off the wall while telling myself it was temporary. The pressure, the stress, the reputation loss, the drinking. I wanted to believe that the man who once kissed my knuckles while we waited for the dryer to finish was in there somewhere. But pressure doesn't bruise. Shame does. Control does. And it started showing up not in punches but in fingers. Pressed into my upper arm during an argument over groceries. Wrapped around my wrist when I tried to take my purse and leave the house. He didn't hit me. Not yet. Just stopped letting me move freely. Stopped letting me speak in full sentences. 8 months after the accusation, I got my hair done, just a little trim and color, nothing fancy. He saw the salon charge and threw my purse across the living room. $45, you think we're rich? You spent money without asking. What the hell's wrong with you, Vanessa? I swallowed my shame and told him I used my own paycheck. Didn't matter. He grabbed my arm tight, hard. 5 finger-shaped bruises bloomed the next day like petals in reverse. I told my coworkers it was a curling iron burn. Wore long sleeves that week in July. Lisa from the library saw me fan myself while reshelving books and asked, half joking, "You freezing or hiding a bad tattoo?" I smiled. My heart didn't. That night I packed a bag. A small one, pajamas, documents, some cash hidden inside a paperback. I was going to go to a hotel, call Denise, figure it out tomorrow. I'd almost zipped it shut when he came into the room. He saw the bag and broke. Dropped to his knees. I'll never forget the sound. It wasn't a cry. It was a collapse. "Don't leave me," he said. "I'm sorry. I don't know what I've become. Please, Ness, please." He wrapped his arms around my legs. Pressed his face into my hip like a child. Tears soaked through my jeans. And I, God help me, held him. Because I told myself this was the real him. That the yelling, the grabbing, the cold silences weren't who he really was. That the man on his knees, that was the version waiting to return. I unpacked the damn bag. Put the documents back in the nightstand. Pressed his hair back as he fell asleep in my lap. Hurt gets cozy when you dress it as love. And I kept choosing cozy over confrontation. Because I didn't want to lose the man I'd married. Only I already had. After that, the slope got steeper. The bruises darker. The apologies fewer. The control tighter. He stopped pretending it was an accident when he shoved me. Stopped crying after he slammed doors. Started sleeping with his back to me like I wasn't even there. And when he did turn around, it was with a sneer. School librarian reading Dr. Seuss to toddlers. Real important job you got. Tell me, Ness, when did you get so pathetic? Each word was an eraser across my identity. And I let it happen like a frog left slowly boiling in a pot. My sister Denise started asking questions. "V, are you okay? You sound different. What's going on with Terrence?" I lied like it was my job. "Busy. Tired. Just the weather acting funny." She didn't push, but she didn't believe me either. Lisa from church, who happened to be a detective, bumped into me in the store wearing a high-neck sweater in 85-degree heat. She looked me up and down and said, "If you ever need to talk, you know where I am." She handed me her card. I nodded and put it in my wallet. And I avoided her like a lifeline I wasn't ready to grab, because what if grabbing it meant everything changed? I wasn't ready for everything to change. Not yet. But the truth. Silence was no longer safety. It had become a sentence. And I was halfway into serving life. Slow fade, the digital photo frame in the kitchen transitions to a blank screen. No more pictures, just reflection. What no one tells you is that abuse doesn't always leave scars you can see. Sometimes it steals your morning voice. Your mirror. Your laughter. You're still alive. You're just not living. And one day you realize, if staying doesn't kill your body, it just might kill your soul. It was nearly midnight when I realized I wasn't afraid of him anymore. I was afraid of what I'd become if I stayed. That evening had been quiet, almost too quiet. I couldn't sleep as usual. Anxiety hummed in my gut like a second heartbeat, so I got out of bed and made tea, chamomile, pointless but a ritual, one little thing I could still control. I was wearing my robe, a gift from my sister, burgundy silk with delicate embroidered flowers on the sleeves. It used to make me feel graceful, feminine. Lately, it felt like a costume. And then I heard his car. The headlights arced across the window, the engine coughed to silence. And the slam of the door told me everything I needed to know. A hard slam. Bad mood. Drunk mood. Here we go. I counted 6 seconds from the door to the lock. He fumbled with his keys. When the door swung open, the smell hit me before he did. Bourbon, sweat, cigarettes, rage. He stepped into the kitchen, eyes glassy and hollow. His shirt hung half-tucked, belt undone. The man who once sent me haikus via text was now a ghost looking for something to burn. There on the counter sat the envelope he found. A new apartment application, cheaper than the last, farther away, rent I could afford alone. And this time I hadn't bothered to hide it. Maybe I'd given up. Or maybe, just maybe, some small, quiet part of me was done waiting for a sign and had started becoming one. He picked up the envelope, pulled out the form, and I saw it happen in real time: confusion, realization, rage. What the hell is this? He wasn't slurring, that was the terrifying part. He was furious and focused. I could barely get the words out. Terrence, I can't do this anymore, I'm leaving. That's when everything spiraled. He shouted. He tore the application into shreds. Each rip louder than the last. You're trying to leave me again. You think I'll let you make me the villain. You're not leaving, Vanessa, you're mine. He moved toward me. I stepped back. Hands up, not to hit, just to plead, to protect. Please listen, we're hurting each other, it's not working. Terrence, He grabbed my shoulders. Not like before, not the don't leave me grip. This was ownership. Rage packed into fingers. I tried to pull away, but his grip tightened. You don't get to ruin what I have left, not you. And then, like a punctuation mark to our story, his hand snapped across my face. The back of it. A clean, practiced blow. My lip caught on my tooth, split straight down the center. I stumbled, gasping. He didn't blink. No shock, no regret, no apology. Only these 4 cold words. Clean yourself up. Then he walked away, slowly. Like nothing had happened. I sat on the kitchen floor, blood dripping from my mouth onto the robe my sister gave me. And in that moment, something in me died. But something else, something stronger, finally woke up. No more excuses. No more waiting. I wasn't going to run. I was going to end this. Properly, publicly, permanently. Because if I left that night, he'd spin the story, he'd cry, he'd charm. I'd be hysterical, making things up. Trying to punish him. Not this time. The world needed to see him, this version of him, as clearly as I saw that hand crash across my cheek. So I made up my mind. I wasn't leaving in the dark. I was flipping on every light in the house. I started with my sister. It was after midnight, but I didn't care. She answered groggy. V, what's wrong? And the dam broke, I told her everything. About the grabbing, the yelling, the money, the fear, the slap. Her voice cracked. I said, I'm not calling the police just yet, but I'm going to make sure somebody sees what he's done. Come in the morning, I said. 8 a.m. I need a witness. I'll be there, she said without hesitation. I'll leave by 5. Then I called Pastor Jerome. He'd married us, he'd seen our highs. He needed to see the truth, too. He answered in seconds. I told him the bare bones. He listened quietly. And then, "What do you need, Sister Vanessa?" "I need you to come tomorrow. No sermons, no marriage advice, just stand beside me, believe me." "I'll be there," he said. "You are not alone." Last call, Lisa. Detective Lisa Hartwell. My friend, my mirror. The one I'd been avoiding for months. "Lisa," I said, "he hit me tonight, and I'm done." She didn't hesitate. "Do I need to send someone now?" "Tomorrow," I told her. "I want you there when I tell him what's coming. I want you to see the bruise. I want it on record." "You sure?" she asked. "I've never been more sure," I said. It was 1 a.m. by now. I didn't sleep. I didn't cry. I made breakfast. The reckoning breakfast. Poured every ounce of pain into perfection. China plates, gardenias, grits, steam rising from hope itself. I wore my mother's funeral dress. Pressed my grandmother's pearls into my ears. Brushed back my hair. And I didn't even touch the concealer. Let the bruise show. Let every mark be a final word on the pages he thought he could keep rewriting. When the doorbell rang the next morning, it didn't sound like fear anymore. It sounded like freedom. Like courage arriving right on time. "Lisa." "Pastor Jerome." "Denise." Faces grim with love and fire. Eyes brimming with anger and grace. They saw me. My swollen lip. The handprint on my cheek. They said nothing. Because some truths are so loud they don't need a voice. We walked into the dining room. Together. And that's when the story shifted. I watched my husband's face as he looked up from his plate. And for once, he was the one who looked afraid. They say when something breaks, that's when the light gets in. When Terrence's hand struck my face, it split more than just my lip. It cracked open everything I had buried, from the hope to the fear to the belief that I could love someone out of their darkness. And in that crack, light spilled in. The morning of the reckoning isn't some blur of rage or chaos like you'd think it would be. It was quiet, steady, like the moment just before a hurricane makes landfall, except this time I was the storm. Terrence's smile faltered the second he saw who walked through that door. Detective Lisa Hartwell. Pastor Jerome. My sister Denise. They flanked me like angels with steel in their spines. And he crumbled faster than I thought he would. "Vanessa, what is this?" His voice barely cleared his throat. I didn't sit back down. I stood spine straight, bruised but unbroken. "This," I said, "is the consequence you thought would never come. This is the reckoning." I said it not through gritted teeth, but out loud for the first time in years, with clarity in my voice that came from walking through hell barefoot and finally refusing to shrink again. I told the truth. For the first time out loud without watering it down. I told them everything. How he isolated me. How he gripped my arm until it bruised. How he threw a dinner plate like it was a message. How he made my life so small I didn't realize I was disappearing piece by piece. And then about the night before. The slap. The silence afterward. The blood that dried while he walked away as if I were furniture. The room listened like a courtroom because it was. A court of truth, of healing, of reckoning. "You can't do this to me," Terrence stuttered. "I'm your husband." "You used to be," I said. When Lisa stepped forward, handcuffs glinting in the soft kitchen light, Terrence tried to appeal again. "Please, we had love, years of it. And that's the thing that crushed me most. We did. But love without safety isn't love. It's a noose made of velvet." And when she cuffed him, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt free. Like chains dropping I didn't even realize had gotten so tight. Love didn't save me. I did. When they took him away, I heard it, the front door clicking shut. That little mundane sound. That was the moment I started breathing again. The days after were strange. Quiet. The kind of quiet that's not scary anymore. Denise stayed for a while. She helped me file for divorce. Helped me pack away the things of his I didn't want to see again. Helped me burn the love notes that now read more like receipts for gaslighting. I changed the locks. I put up cameras. Not out of fear, but as a declaration. This house is mine now. This space. This peace. People in Charleston whispered, of course. Some were shocked. Some supportive. Some said things like, "Marriage is hard." Sometimes women exaggerate. Why didn't she leave sooner? But I learned to ignore those voices. Because they weren't there the night I bled on the tile. They didn't scrub gravy off the wall. They didn't hear the cabinet doors slam or feel the slow erosion of self-worth whispered into their ear night after night. No, survivors don't owe their timelines to anyone. I found a therapist. A woman named Dr. Simone. She didn't look shocked when I told her how long I stayed. She just nodded and taught me the language of strength, the kind that comes after the fall. She helped me trade guilt for truth. Helped me look in the mirror and see a fighter, not a failure. She told me, survival isn't weakness. It means you knew when it was time to choose you. I also joined a support group. Room full of women. Different faces, same story. And hearing their voices finally gave mine permission to speak. We cried together. Laughed too. We weren't just surviving. We were reclaiming. Months passed. The divorce finalized. Terrence didn't contest it. I think he knew what he broke couldn't even be patched together with regret. He tried to write once, from rehab. Said he was sober. On medication. Taking responsibility. Asked for forgiveness. And one day, not for him but for me, I gave it. Because forgiveness isn't always about letting someone back in. Sometimes it's the most radical form of self-love. I'll say, you don't get to carry my peace anymore. I still live in this house, the same one we bought together 15 years ago. But it's mine now. I moved the furniture, changed the colors, framed new photos, threw away the ones that lied to me for years. I sit on my porch in the mornings, drink coffee in silence, stretch in the light, read books without glancing at the door just to make sure I'm alone. I'm not in hiding anymore. I'm home. I bought a little cottage near the water. A peace place. I go there some weekends. Sit on the deck. Journal. Watch the sea remake itself over and over like it's reminding me, this is what rebirth looks like. Some of my friends ask if I'll ever date again. Maybe. But the day I walked away from Terrence, I fell in love with someone new. May. And I'm learning how to keep showing up for her. Vanessa's voice softens, music swells just a little beneath her narration. If you're hearing this, if any part of it feels close to home, let me tell you something no one said to me when I needed to hear it. You don't need permission to leave. Not from your mom. Not from your pastor. Not from a lawyer. Not even from the mirror where you don't recognize yourself anymore. You don't owe the world a slow death of your spirit in the name of commitment. You are enough. You are not crazy or weak. You are not too emotional. You are not failing at being a woman. You're fighting for your life, which is the bravest thing anyone can ever do. To whoever's listening, watching, reading this, you can live. You can survive. More than that, you can thrive. You can laugh again. Sleep without flinching again. Drink sunshine instead of fear. Because healing is possible. Freedom is real. And you're worth all of it. For anyone who's still trying to find the strength to choose themselves, let this be your sign. I see you, I was you. And you don't have to belong to your pain forever. Always choose yourself. Always.